up, everybody? I am James Barjuda, and this is Shed Some Light. Today, we're going to be talking about the new changes to the Georgia voting law, SB 202, and we're going to be kicking it around in the comments as we normally do, if you so choose to. And that's just what I normally say. It's not as if that always happens where people, talk about it in the comments, but that is what the platform is here for, to go ahead and allow people to exercise their opinions and what they think about things on life and the Bible and things in general. It's here to. The Bible says, "Come, let us reason together." That's my goal. That's my purpose. It's not to debate. It's not to argue. It's not to put down. It's not any of that. It's just simply to shed some light on the world today. So yeah, we're going to be reading the new or bits and pieces of the SB 202, and then seeing what the Bible says out of First Samuel chapter 8, and then get along with our day. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. One of the biggest changes in the bill would explain early voting access or expand early voting access for most counties, adding an additional mandatory Saturday and formally codifying Sunday voting hours as optional. Counties can have early voting open as long as 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at minimum. If you live in a large metropolitan county, you might not notice a change. For most other counties, you will have an extra weekend day, and your weekday early voting hours will likely be longer. If you live in Fulton County, you will no longer be able to use one of the two mobile voting buses the county purchased last year to help with long lines, while a 2019 omnibus allowed early voting sites to be in more locations, including places that are normally election day polls. The Republican-led legislature has now written laws that expressly prohibits a mobile poll except during an emergency declared by the governor. For polling places changes or closures, the law now requires better notice of the changes, including a 4 by 4 foot sign that shows where the law or where the new location is. Another new rule that affects both in-person and early voting and election day voting will prohibit anyone except poll workers from handing out water to voters in line, and outlaw passing out food and water to voters within 150 feet of the building that serves as a poll inside a polling place, or within 25 feet of any voter standing in line. Depending on the location, it is still possible for third party groups to have food and water available, and it is still possible for the lines to extend beyond 150 feet. During early voting, counties must publicly report daily how many people have voted in person, how many absentee ballots have been issued, returned, accepted, and rejected. Early voting sites and times must be published publicly ahead of time. For runoffs, things would be tighter. The law says early voting should start as soon as possible after a preliminary or general election, and requires in person early voting the Monday through Friday before the election. This means counties may not be able to offer weekend early voting depending on how quickly it takes them to finish the first election and prepare for the second. Now, that's what I'm going to read. I will leave this article in the description so that you may be able to read it for yourself. And I understand for our podcast listeners, I'll try to find some way to leave that link somewhere too, so you will be able to glean for yourself what it is that this article is saying about the details of the law, and it goes into full detail of what it is. Now, let's listen to this one little tidbit here and read First
Who
Samuel.
call me and say, why is it that when I go to vote in person, I have to show a photo ID, but I can send in a request and just send in my ballot and nobody knows who it is?
Do you see evidence that the system is allowing for fraud right now?
There is clearly inefficiencies, evidence of fraud that would overtake or change the outcome of the election. No. Are there inefficiencies? Yes.
But critics scoff, saying the laws would affect some voters far more, those who are older and those who are black or brown.
African Americans are less likely to have a government issued photo ID. We think that that's discriminatory,
especially in a place like
All
Georgia,
right.
with
Well,
a deep history
I am
of
black.
racial restrictions on voting.
And that's all
Now
I'm
you
gonna
don't
say
see.
about that. Let's read First Samuel chapter 8 all the way down. So this is starting with verse 1. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah. And they served in Bathsheba. But his sons did not follow in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. Don't that sound like today? So the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not follow in your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." But when they said this, "Give us a king to lead us," it displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, "Listen to all that what the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king will reign over them will claim them as his rights." Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, "This is what a king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will reign, or some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of fifties, and others to plow his ground, and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment of his chariots. He will make your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take a tenth of your grain and of your vintage and give it to his officials and his attendants. He will your male and your female servants and your best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own use. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourself will become his slave. When the day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day." But the Lord refused to listen to Samuel. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. Sorry. Let me read that again. This is verse 19. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. "No," they said, "we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, and are with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles." When Samuel heard all the people said, he repeated before the Lord, and the Lord answered, "Listen to them and give them a king." Now, that is just like today. We have taxes We serve our government, and any which way you want to kind of put it, we have corruption in our government. But it's on us. We elect our officials. We allow them to stay in office for as long as we allow them to stay in office. It really turns back onto us, and just like it was on the people of Israel in that day, they were fed up with having the Lord to be sovereign and rule and reign over their life. They needed a man to step in. They needed their flesh and blood, something tangible that they can see, and all its fallibilities and finiteness said we need a king, and God gave it to him, and now this is where we are at. With that, I'm James Barjuda. This is Shed Some Light. Hope you guys are truly blessed. With that, peace.